And I hope we've survived our ever-changing weather patterns, that's for sure. And I'm glad everyone who has the opportunity to join us as we talk about the interview process. I want to just give some backstory because I had the opportunity to look at our attendee list, and we have quite a few people joining us today. And if this is the first introduction to our services, and because these names were not as recognizable, I wanted to take the liberty of sharing with you. My firm, APA Solutions, is a employment service human capital firm that has been ensconced in the Western New York community for many, many years, representing growth-oriented companies. And although the partners of that organization have long since retired, and I have now owned it for many years, we are still very much true to their legacy in that we only represent growth-oriented companies. And in doing so, we were continually frustrated by the disconnect that existed between the candidates, the job seekers, and the companies, the hiring managers. And I wish I could say that we were a group that could just ignore that atrocity, but we weren't that group. And we knew that we had in our possession a vast amount of intellectual property that was not being shared with the candidate population. So we transformed the candidate portal from APA Solutions to Career Reform so that we could provide individuals the same coaching services that we provide to our client companies. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today, and I want to prepare you, is probably going to be a lot of information that is very different than what you've heard or what you've seen in the past. You know, I know that people interview in the same way that they always have, and they're always surprised when I take them through this process. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you need to think about it and digest it, and you have a question after, Kim will give you directions at the end about how to keep that communication constant. But the fact of the matter is we're sharing information with you that employers, for whatever reason, don't have the time, don't have the energy, aren't comfortable sharing with you. But as Malcolm in the Middle, we hear this type of stuff all the time. And what we see is that the normal candidate is so entrenched in yesterday and how things used to be that they're failing to ignore that as the business world has changed, so has the needs and wants of an employer, and therefore the interview process has changed dramatically. So based on that, you know, I see all these tips about, you know, oh yes, you're going out and you're a job seeker and you're ready to go, and what is the first thing that you do? Well, the very first thing you do is obviously get your resume together. And people are just so conditioned to do that. And what we do is we stop people from that natural inclination. Don't get your resume together. Let's take some time to figure out what is the best way to proceed with your job search. So Kim, if we could just go to the next slide so that I can share that with them. What I'm going to be saying is you need fame. You absolutely need fame. And what I mean by that is you need a strategic plan in order to get to the appropriate end result that you're seeking. Not only is a plan important, but you probably don't realize that, but employers are actually interviewing you in a way where they're asking if you have a plan. Again, you don't connect to that because you can't possibly fathom that they would be concerned about how you're interested in moving your future forward, but they are looking for that more strategic mindset than at any point in the past. So we are talking about through our time together, you're going to see how you're not taking advantage of a lot of opportunities to expose yourself to more interviews, and then you can make it work and execute your plan in a completely different way than you've thought of in the past. So I want you to be thinking about what we're talking about today in regard to this whole fame piece, because it's going to open yourself up to areas of your background and how you leverage your background in ways that you have not dreamed about in the past. And it's going to allow you to be a stronger interviewee by just understanding how important having more of a plan in place is before you embark on this journey. So keep in mind, we're going for fame here. So as we go to the next slide, I want you to think about, as the president of You Incorporated, because that's how an employer views you. An employer does not view you just as an arm or a leg or a brain or a mouth. They look at you in totality. And in doing so, they're going to interview you in totality. And we've been so conditioned to interview, again, to just speak to our skill level, that we don't recognize that an employer is hiring the whole person. Drama, Kim Kardashian and all, they're getting that whole set. And I bring this to your attention not only for you to understand the employer mindset, but for you to really ask yourself, wait a minute, am I leveraging my background in as many potential ways as possible? Am I forgetting about an industry that maybe when I looked 3-5 years ago never would have been interested in my background and is now interested in my background? This whole org chart, You the President, and the different ways that you can leverage your background very, very much speaks to how we perform throughout our career reform process, especially when we do our classroom training and online training and one-on-one training. We move people into empowerment in that top spot because, again, it gets them to know and recognize that a company, a hiring manager, an entrepreneur, whomever is hiring you, is looking for that self-empowered person. They are looking for that individual that is moving their future forward. They're not interested in moving your future forward. They will give you the tools. They will give you everything that you potentially can need, but it's up to you to take them and continually be moving your future forward. And when I look at people and how they're doing this, what I see is that everybody's trying to make themselves a generalist. Like, I see resumes and they've got so much information on it, and they're like, I'm going to throw everything on that resume so that an employer sees I can do all of these things, when it actually has the counterintuitive effect to it, in that if you're a customer service manager and you now could be an inside sales manager, or you could be a bank manager, or an operations manager, or some other type of manager that is going to be able to leverage those skills, you can't just have one resume that reflects all those different brands. Just like Pepsi doesn't have one label that is the same for their Diet Pepsi, for their Sprite, for their, Honest Tea, or whatever the case may be, because each level of ingredients is a little bit different to whomever the consumer is that is purchasing that particular product. So I challenge you to think about, wait a minute, really, what is my occupation? And what is my title? And is it the same that it was even a few years ago? Are we even called the same things? So this is all part of getting interview ready. That's a great step. So I want you to be thinking about, you guys, in this self-empowered way, the business of you. And understanding that an employer looks at you with each particular sphere that I have highlighted here. Again, you're not connecting to that on an interview. You're being asked a question and you're not saying, they're probably asking me that question because they want to know more about me. They're probably asking that question because they want to see how I would respond to this technical question, again, what I want you to understand that regardless of whether you're entry level or whether you're a seasoned professional, an employer is looking at you as this whole entity and comparing themselves very, very much to you in that same way. Because when you look at a company, they have some form of human resources. They have some form of sales and marketing. They have finance. They have operations. They have technology. And I know it's hard for you to believe, but you have all those departments in the business of you also. So this is the first impression that I want to make for you as we're moving more into you are the master of your own future domain. So you're thinking about this, and you'll see how it all starts to fall into place as we get more in depth into the actual interview phase. So we want to spend some time thinking about the interview. And let's be honest, we just hear the word interview and we're not excited. I mean, interview, it goes right to your brain and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to sit there, I have to be uncomfortable, I have to talk about myself, I have to be vulnerable. Why are they asking these questions? Anything that has the word interview in it does not denote, in most job seekers' mind, a pleasant experience. All right? So if we could start framing in our mind, instead of an interview, looking at it more from where an employer is coming from, in that an employer is really looking at this like a business meeting. I'm going to get together with the person and we're going to have a meeting. And this meeting is going to encompass me speaking more about my problems as the employer, why this position exists, what I need from a person, and I'm going to see then how that individual that I'm in the meeting with can really serve the purposes of this particular opening, this need, this deficit that I have within my company. So again, if you can start reframing in your brain that this is really just more about a meeting, you're going to be amazed at the differences in how you approach getting together with an employer than you had in the past. If you go to an interview and you go in that vulnerable place, that first date, awkwardness, all of those things, being sober at a party when everybody's drunk, the fact of the matter is that you immediately are put off kilter. But if you look at this and say, you know, really, honestly, I'm getting together with this business person. I don't know if this is right for me. They don't know if I'm right for them. And you're going to see that if you do that, not only are you going to make a better decision about what a good move is for you, but they're going to make a better decision about whether you're the right match. All right. So we're talking to somebody that we've given all this power to, all this authority to, when really employers, for the most part, of course, unless you're the Donald, are uncomfortable in interviewing people. They have the same, you know, worries and concerns that you do as the job seeker. So as we're thinking about this, and we're going to go on to the next slide, you're going to see that, well, wait a minute, if they're kind of thinking and feeling the same thing I am, in that they need to make a good hire, I would love to find the right job. They need to find a person who's going to do this. I want to make sure that that's what I'm going to be doing. So you can see that they're thinking very, very much along the same lines as you are. But again, most candidates don't connect with that. Therefore, when they go to the business meeting, they're answering questions in such an unrelated way to what an employer is delivering that they never make that connection like they would have or could have. So you think about like dating, and you meet that person, and it's like you have that immediate connection. You're talking the same language. It's a very, very similar thing in that you are going into this meeting having a vision as to how this thing is going to be going and being delivered. An employer is going into that vision. But if you're not going in at the same place with the same vision, it immediately starts off, and it's difficult to come back from. So they're thinking very, very similarly to you. And again, if you can reframe that thought process, you're going to see how that's true, especially as you reflect on past interviews. Next slide. This is always so surprising to the people that I speak to, that an employer would be remotely fearful about hiring. And what I want to share with you is that with the downturn in the economy, with the resurgence, that has put employers in a human capital place that they have never been in before. And for the first time, certainly in the time that I've been recruiting, they're putting pen to paper and figuring out, what if this person doesn't work out? What if I bring them into my company? What if they're a poison? What if they don't work? What if I train them? What if I give them medical? What if I pay them? All the residual things that an employer could be thinking about is going through their mind. And again, what the average job seeker is not connecting with is, instead of understanding the fear piece from an employer standpoint, they're actually interviewing and feeding into the fear instead of alleviating the fear. But because they don't know that fear exists at all, they can't imagine that they would be, undergoing that type of exercise. But it's amazing to me as I'm speaking to candidates, and I'll interview them and I'll say, well, why did you leave your past employer? And they'll be like, no idea. I have absolutely no idea. They just came in and they said I was gone. Just told me, pack up my desk. They just walked me out front. And then my natural next question is, do you share this type of information with an employer? And of course, their response is always, yes, I do. What else am I going to say? I have to tell them what I know. All right. So the point is that I'm all about being honest. I'm all about being natural and organic. But when you say things to an employer that you deem truthful in a way that cuts right to the heart, they do not interpret it in the same way that you think you're delivering it. So I caution you to think about your approach to the interview process, how you answer certain questions. Have you been coming in second? Have you not been called for second interviews? All of these items are telltale signs that you are potentially presenting yourself in a way that feeds into this fear instead of alleviating it and having the employer see that you are the answer that they're seeking for whatever particular problem they have. Because the truth of the matter is they have a problem. If they have an opening, there is something going on within their company that they need this person to take care of that isn't being taken care of today. But again, there's not that connection. So be thinking about that as we're continuing. Next slide, Kim. So what is this all about? Well, I didn't want to show you this gorgeous brain first, but what I'm presenting to you is really getting yourself, that 3-pound muscle we call the command center, looking at the interview process in a different way than you have before. And you can do that, but it doesn't happen just by us hanging out for an hour on this webinar. You have to start speaking to yourself in a different way than you have when you're approaching an interview in the past. And you have to start telling yourself, hey, you know what? I'm going on a meeting with this employer. I'm going to kind of anticipate, you know, this is the position, what his problems could be, what could he be worried about. Instead of you staying in your own place and space, if you can start to be spending some time in that employer space, you're going to be amazed about how you can start bridging that connection problem, because a candidate is always so worried about what am I going to say, how am I going to say it, always in that vulnerable place that they never take the time to really get schooled in the language of the employer. So if you're going to be dropped into this foreign land, excuse me, what is an employer? What do they look like? What language do they speak? And the more that you can do that, the more effective you're going to be in the representation of yourself. And it's going to be a healthier place for you to be, because the more you challenge your brain to think differently, you actually start to carve new brain pathways that didn't exist before. Yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks, contrary to that old wise tale. So we're talking about reformulating this in your brain. And after I've coached people on interviewing, the very next interview that they go on, it's like, oh my gosh, I see the difference. I totally see the difference. It doesn't mean that they necessarily got that job, but just looking at it this way starts to put them into a lot more competitive opportunity than it had in the past. So think differently, talk to yourself differently. You are definitely going to see different results. So what is this all about? What you have to understand, and this is super, super, super important for you to understand, an employer does not understand your world. All right? He doesn't get what you're thinking and feeling. He has not been out in the job search process. The employers that we've actually surveyed within a variety of the growth companies that we both represent and do not represent, is that the average hiring manager has not looked for a job in 20 years. I mean, that's the ice age for all intensive purposes. So we go to a meeting thinking that we have a kinship with this person. Don't they understand that what it's like to lose the job? Don't they understand what it's like to have a bad boss or a bad experience? You know, no, they don't. So again, if you think that that's speaking the language of employer, that's not speaking the language of employer, because rarely are they coming from that place. They are looking for you to come from a place of empowerment. And empowerment for you incorporated doesn't mean that you haven't made a mistake. Doesn't mean that you haven't screwed up in your background. Doesn't mean that you haven't taken a job that you shouldn't have taken. It doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is that you are more confident in your space, in the representation of you incorporated. And because of that, you are going to be presenting to an employer a more empowered person than a vulnerable person, because employers don't hire vulnerable people. Because when they see a fearful person, all they see is that, oh my gosh, this person's not going to help me solve my problem. If they're afraid, all right, how are they going to be with my customers? What are they going to do with John in shipping and receiving, who's a rotten guy? How are they going to handle our worst customer, Mandy? I mean, all of these things go through their mind. That all comes back to their particular problem and whether you can solve it. So I get that we have been taught from a young age not to be braggers or not to put out there what we've done, but being confident about yourself, even if it's a quiet confidence, doesn't have to be my confidence, is imperative to you being able to be within the confines of the type of companies that can move you forward. You know, I just wrote a couple blogs about this, as a matter of fact, over the last week, and I was fascinated because I actually had, I can't remember the exact number, but within a week, I had like over 30 people that I had sent out on job interviews that I had interviewed personally. I coached them, I gave them an assignment, I did everything I could to prepare them for the rigor of interviewing. Single one of them was eliminated because they weren't confident enough. And it just really caused me to do more research on confidence and why are we and why aren't we, and how people that are less confident make less money. And there's just so many different arms and gyrations that come away from you not being able to speak about yourself or fundamentally even believe in yourself, that it's something everybody can get comfortable in, go back to the brain, but it takes practice. So as much as we diminish what makes us strong and what makes us want or need to improve in certain areas, just taking the time to are and writing them down and doing our own little SWOT analysis. You know, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What opportunities do I have? What are my threats? And as you look at a strength and say, you know what, I'm really great in, you know, solving problems. You know, people come to me all the time, and what, I'm always the person that's done, make it happen. All right, but I've always been doing it within the confines of small companies, and maybe as I look at my background, that's why I keep on reaching the glass ceiling and I'm not being promoted. Well, then does it mean that you need to be looking for a larger small company or a middle-sized company or a larger company altogether? But going through exercise and understanding about your background and saying, what I'm doing over, I look at the course of work history, I just been making the donuts. I just keep on going to a donuts and making the donuts and making the donuts. And I've never expanded to pastries. I've never expanded to coffee. I've never expanded to anything but just making the donuts. And what I realize is that I need to be stretching more muscles. I need to get more experience. I need to get more tools in my toolbox. And going through this self-awareness journey allows you to understand that when you're interviewing, wait a minute, he's got a problem and I have the skills that can help him solve that problem, but he also is going to be giving to me something more than a paycheck. And that's, again, that old-fashioned mindset that all you get from working is a paycheck. You should be, with each experience that you have, picking up intellectual properties so that you can speak to that on an interview. It shows that you've had a strategy. When you go back to our fame, all right, you had a focus plan. When you're interviewing, you should be able to connect your history to why you took positions, what your motivation was. Because employers interpret that like, oh my goodness, this individual purposely moved their background to that next level of evolution. That's what we're doing here at my company. We're changing, we're growing, we're enhancing. And the truth of the matter is most people don't even know they've done that. When I tell people and regurgitate connecting your history and future goals through strategy, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I did do that. They don't even realize that they did it. And that's why it's so important for you to take the time and look at your past and say, you know what, I took that role because my goal was to enhance my background in this particular area. And now that I've been within the confines of the company and I'm looking at growing above and beyond, unfortunately, it's limited. So I'm only looking to make a strategic move with an employer that allows that consistent continued growth. So definitely from that standpoint, you know, this is such an important preparation. Yes. Everybody, we just had a quick question that came in that I want to acknowledge about the PowerPoint presentation. Kim's going to talk about that at the end, but you are absolutely going to get a copy of the PowerPoint, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's why I take more notes that are related, and then you'll kind of see how it all comes together. So the key to interviewing is you need to get why they're asking you the questions. Because if you don't get the why, you will never get the right answer. You know, why do they want to know this? I mean, what is their purpose? All right. That's why I hate like all these interview tips and, 16 ways to ace an interview and, don't say this and do say this and handle. Look at employers want the real you. I mean, bottom line, every single day of every single week, an employer says the same thing to me. I don't know. They just didn't seem comfortable in their own skin. It didn't seem natural. It seemed like they were faking. All of those things. Because again, an employer is going to be natural. They are going to be organic. They're not going to be putting on airs. But when we go to interviews, we decide we have to be fake for some strange reason, because there will be this gold statue at the end of this performance. No, there will not. All right. So that's why I'm asking you to be doing all this preparatory work, because you're going to see how darn prepared you are in a really natural way to me just giving you a tip about, hey, don't chew blue bubble gum, hide piercings. I mean, that is nothing that gets to the root of the issue. If you don't get why they're asking the question, you will not give them the response that they are looking for in a way that connects with them. So you have to go back to, what is that employer thinking and feeling? So they're asking me that question because maybe they had a bad experience with the last person they hired in a completely different role. Maybe they're asking you that question because they want to see if you fit in. Maybe they're asking you that question because they want to make sure that you can work in a fast-paced, crazy type of company. But when they're asking you, you need to be facilitating responses that connect back to them in a way that hits that problem. See, it's not separate from the issue at hand. If you went to buy a car and walked out with a cell phone, you'd be like, that didn't work out too well. No, did it? All right? They are interviewing you to make the determination if you're the problem solver. And all of the questions that they go through are normally going to be indicative of getting to that end result. All right? So, as we continue, so when we talk about that whole person, when we talk about that you incorporated in the beginning, they are going to be getting all of these things covered in an interview. So a normal candidate is just so used to talking about their hard skills, and I can tell you right now that is not where greatness lies on an interview. 90% of the time, people get jobs because they've done a great job in the soft skill area. They've done a great job in the strategic preparation that I've covered with you. That's where they've done a great job. I have not had an employer call me and say, an engineer cannot engineer. He was a liar. He wasn't an engineer. All right? An office manager could not manage an office. That's what we found out about her, Joan. She was a complete and total fraud. We don't get those type of calls. We get the type of calls that are like, ay, yay, yay. Mark has more drama in 1 month than the Kardashians do in one show. I can't have it. It's usually always connected to auxiliary items versus hard skills. Yet, the normal candidate focuses on, how am I going to speak about my experience? Because that could be the only thing that they could be concerned about to solve their problem. No, because the fact of the matter is you could have a great tactician who's an absolute poison or cancer to your organization. So they're going to be looking for more of that, of that person who is operating on all cylinders. So that's why how you present yourself is so important. All right. So as we start to be moving into and connecting more to what an employer is thinking and feeling, I want you to start to see now how important that connection is as we move on to the next slide. If you've taken the time to spend looking at it from the world of an employer, think about an investment you've made and how picky you've been about it. Again, let's go back to that cell phone. Let's go back to that TV. Whatever household investment you've made, you have not bought it from a person who did not speak confidently about it. You certainly didn't revisit that auto dealership if you had a horrible experience. So you have to understand that if you're not confident in speaking about yourself, employers don't get that. Because most hiring managers, most entrepreneurs, me being one of them, oh my God, I could talk to you about my business literally for the next 45 days straight. Super passionate about it, all right? So if you come in and you're not passionate about you, I don't get all the baggage that comes with it. All I see is a person who's not going to be representing my company with the same enthusiasm or passion that I have. See, again, we're like Teflon. Whatever comes here, you know, it reverts back, all right? So they are looking for somebody who can speak confidently about themselves, all right? A person who hasn't just gone from job to job to job to job, all right? They've been self-directed. They've had motivations. So you might be a person who's spent some time being an office manager, and then you were working in the medical community, and then you had another unrelated position, and you're like, well, Joan, how do I tell that story? You tell it truthfully but purposely. And how you do that is by saying, you know, I purposely put myself into a variety of different types of positions and cultures, because with my skills, I wasn't quite sure what was going to be that long-term role. So I joined these companies on my quest to really figure that out. And what I can say to you is, based on that, I want to focus my career in this particular direction. And that's why when I saw your advertisement and you had a need for a person like that, it seemed clear to me that where you were going with this role was very similar to where I'm looking to go with a long-term partner. So I was enthused to get together with you today to chat about that. See, what most people do is they're just so much talking about themselves, and I don't know if you've ever been on one of those dates. But if you've ever been on a date or you met a person socially or whatever, and all they did was talk about themselves, and you're like, I thought this was a conversation. I'm sorry. I thought we were supposed to be interacting. An interview is an interaction. So you should be relating back why you came into their mix and how this position relates to your strategic plan. And if you haven't done that in your past, I hate to tell you, you're normal, because it is a very, very small population of job seekers that I see that have career plans, all right, that are prepared in the way that I'm sharing with you today, but it doesn't mean that you cannot start it today. I don't care if you're 16, I don't care if you're 60. We have literally helped individuals with every decade that could be represented in the workforce, and no matter what, this process works. It doesn't matter if you're a pharmaceutical company, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneurial company. We see all types of similarities regardless of industries. So you need to start connecting, but starting with the connection to yourself. And then you see, as you get more connected with you and what you have in your toolbox, now you have a better sense of how to leverage it, how to demonstrate it as you're continuing. So you'll see, oh my gosh, I don't know how many of you have actually seen him in doing this interview. his wide range of interviewing styles. So we're, needless to say, not going to use him as the poster child for normalcy. But regardless, you can see now how, as we go into the interview, how much powerfully you can speak about yourself because you've done the preparation to interview. People say, well, you know, Joan, I went to their website. Oh my God, I checked them out online, and you know, I can speak to this and I can speak to that. You need to be able to speak about yourself, all right? You need to be able to speak about yourself and how that website connects to you, how that company connects to you, how this job connects to you, how all of those things make sense to you. And then you can truly say that you are experienced in that area, okay? So we're going to talk about that question that literally is the killer right out of the box. So Kim, as we go to the next slide and we look at that, tell me about yourself. We are talking about that statement that I've seen at tip clubs people rehearse. This has been such a subject of angst. And when I say to people, you know what, this to me should be so natural, but I totally get how this has become such an unnatural item. What I can say to you is you should always be out telling your story, whether you're out looking for a job or you're not. You should always have a very, very confident narrative because it's important and can be utilized in so many different ways. So what we're talking about here is your story, your narrative, your elevator pitch. You know, we say 60 seconds, and we only say that because it doesn't have to be 60 seconds, but it can't be War and Peace either, is that first foray to introduce yourself to an employer, and it should be done in such a way that is from a big picture place and space. So an employer can read, so they're not expecting you to read your resume to them, all right? You are highlighting for them. You are talking big picture, because when an employer tells you about a company, he does not get into product line A, product line B, product line C. You know, he doesn't go through that activity. So the truth of the matter is you have to make sure that, again, for that connection, that you're doing it in very, very much the same way. So you can say, as an overview, you know, I've been within the construction industry for the past 10 years now. That's a summation, all right? And my professional goal is continuing to enhance my ability to grow in a company that's always looking at new technologies and how it affects the construction industry. I've worked for an entrepreneurial company that was fast-paced, constantly changing, allowed me to exercise a lot of different muscles, but where I am currently is I'm looking for that continued growth, physically, mentally, and monetarily, and unfortunately, they're just not in a position to provide me that opportunity. So I'm a selective job seeker. I'm only looking for that right move and right company, and my research has led me to looking forward to having a more in-depth conversation with you. So again, you see how it's not where you're telling your narrative, well, when I was with ABC company, this is what I did. And when I was with CDE company, this is what I did. This is an overview of your history, how it all connects and brought you into the presence of this particular hiring manager at this time, on this day, in this month. All right? And they're going to get more specific with you as the interview progresses, but your narrative is just an overview, a highlight, and it's showing the strategy of how you got where you got. And they will see that you've had a plan. We get back to that first slide that we chatted about, and that you've been strategic about your decision, which takes them from that fear place that you're just making moves to make moves. It gives them a sense that, wow, you know, if she or he has been strategic for themselves, well, then they can help me. They've done a great job for themselves. Guess what? They can do a great job for me. So you can see that as we're going through, and I'm going to show you some of the different questions that fall within the quadrant of that you incorporated piece that I told you about, that you haven't really connected with the fact that that's why they're asking you that question. So as we go on to that next slide, you can see that they want to try to find out who you are as a person. So when they ask you about adversity, when they ask you about, you know, how you've handled a problem, when they ask you those questions, they are doing it because they want to see, when the pedal hits the metal, what are your core values? What are your motivators? How are you going to handle yourself? Because they see, like in this human resource piece, they want to know how well you know yourself. So when people say, you know, hey, tell me about a weakness or something you'd like to improve on, I could literally sell weaknesses for money. People are like, give me a good weakness. I don't know. Why don't we just be truthful? All right. This is not about a task that you're weak in. They're not looking for you to say, I'm weak in Excel. They're looking for you to be strategic in your response to say, you know what? I've primarily been with small companies. I've never been exposed to an organization your size. So I can't sit before you as a person who's leveraged my background in an organization like yours. But what I can share with you is I'm a quick learner. Being in an entrepreneurial company, you have to wear a lot of hats. So I'm looking forward to stretching muscles and contributing to a company in a way that I haven't in my past. This gets back to the why. Why are they asking you these questions? All right. This is why, because they're trying to figure out, who are you as a person? What are you made of? Are you a crier? Are you a drama person? It's all getting to those issues that they've had in the past and don't want to have again, or issues they haven't had that they absolutely don't want to have. That fit, that culture, all of those things is what they're concerned about. Next slide, Kim. Sales and marketing. You know, people will say to me, you know, oh, you know, I need to sell myself better. You know, and when I hear that, it always seems like it's ringing like artificially, if you will. You know, I'm being, you know, uncomfortable speaking about myself. I just think that on an ongoing basis, whether it's through an association that you belong to, whether it's through, you know, a craft club, whatever it is, you should be consistently out talking about yourself in a very natural and organic way so you're comfortable with it. We don't, especially women, this is not because I'm a woman that I'm telling you that, it's statistically proven, all right? You have to understand that you are the best representation of yourself. So if you go in there and you are not the best representation of yourself, who's going to be? Who's going to be? So this is about you speaking confidently about where you are in your career evolution in a way that connects with an employer's problem. If they invited you in, they saw something. People aren't wasting time anymore inviting you in if they haven't seen something in your background. The scary thing is that employers see more possibilities in a person's background than the candidates do themselves. I hear that all the time from employers. Oh my gosh, I was so excited to meet with Margie. I got together with her, and oh my gosh, it was like pulling teeth. It just never went anywhere. All right? So again, practice. Take somebody to coffee. You know, speak with somebody who's a mentor to you. You know, role play. Get comfortable speaking about yourself. It will make all the difference in the world in your representation. Next slide, Kim. There is an overwhelming belief on the part of an employer where they think that candidates believe that they're somehow their parent. Like, I'm your boss, which means I'm your mama, which means I'm going to solve all of your problems. The fact of the matter is the world has become a much smaller place through technology. I am more than happy as an entrepreneur to give people the tools to be successful, but I can share with you that I am not interested in having individuals that are so stuck in their ways, or a fixed mindset as we fondly refer to it, that they're not willing to see the world from a different lens than their own, all right? And how you run your business speaks volumes to an employer. And if you are blaming your boss, blaming a situation, or whatever the case may be, I can say to you that you are feeding into that fear of that employer in a big way. If you have never been strategic for your business, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, that's okay, but you need to give the illusion that you were, and you need to make sure that this position that you're interviewing for makes sense to you. If you're taking a job to take a job just because you're feeling vulnerable and you need to eat and all of those things that I have deep respect for, the only person who should be taking a job to get experience is somebody who's transitioning into the workforce. So an entry-level candidate, I would much rather see a fresh out of college grad take a position that allows them to utilize what they learned in school in a practical way. Then in that case, yeah, you're just taking a job. It might not be a great culture. It might not be the type of boss you want. It might be more, you know, an unhappy experience in terms of you're not going to be rocking going there every day. But if you can rot there and get as much information in your toolbox for 12 to 24 months, you can take that and you can move it to the next employer. It is not hell. It is not something that you have to stay in, but you want to use that experience to get experience, because it is tough for entry-level people to get experience. If you're making a career change and you're going from one industry to another industry, you need that interim job just to make the break. Again, you don't need to stay there, but you need to show the employer that you could make the break. If you're a return to the workforce mom, there's certain variables, but the fact of the matter is that you have to make sure that you are running the business of you like a business, because if you've gone out of business, if you've been downsized or you've been let go or something happened, then there was some glitch in the way you were running your business that you don't want to continue to do for your future. Because I'm telling you right now, you mark my words, everybody who's listening, it is 2014, by 2020, everybody's going to be an independent contractor, and I mean that figuratively. They're going to have a specialty. They're going to have skills in their toolbox. And the closer you make that transition to now, the better off you're going to be, because the middle class is already making less money than they did in 1989. And it's because of this inability to be strategic with their future. So as we go on to the next slide, they want to know, you know, what your salary requirements are. They want to see if your money's been enhancing. They want to see if your expectations are realistic. So again, from a financial standpoint, if you've made a mistake in your past position, that's going to hurt the value of your business. Just like if you let your house run down and your neighbor sold their house for X amount of dollars. How realistic is that? You have to make sure when it comes to this finance piece that you are not living in a bubble. Recent college grad, well, I need this amount of money, I have student loans. Well, that's great, employers don't care, all right? So you have to make sure that what you're looking for in the market is conducive to where you are in your career evolution. and you need to be able to speak comfortably about the subject matter with an employer. We don't even let our candidates handle this. We handle all the offers because it usually gets screwed up on the part of the candidates because they're so uncomfortable with this piece, but it's a very, very important one to master. Next slide, Kim. So the closing of this piece is the reality that an interview is going to be about the introduction, which is your narrative. It's going to be about testing you on the different spheres in the You Incorporated makeup. And then as you're coming to a close, it is up to you to regurgitate back to the employer what you've understood from the interview. Because again, as a point of connection, an employer wants to be able to say to you, all right, this is what I need, and I want to make sure that you've heard what it is that I need, all right? So you being able to do that just really cements for an employer that there's a partnership, all right? So, you know, Mark, what you shared with me today is that this particular department is in need of an overhaul. And you are not looking for a person who's going to come in and just shake all these trees. You want someone who can come in, observe, interpret, make a recommendation for improvements with you, and then map out a strategic plan about how collectively I'm going to accomplish this on your behalf. Am I understanding the role appropriately? Yes, you are. Well, then let me share with you just in summation, again, an overview of how I feel that I can contribute. This is not a place where you say, I am perfect for the job. I want this job. I am dying for the job. It is like going on a first date and asking about marriage. It's ridiculous, and employers hate it. All right? So you never want to give the illusion or diminish your business by saying, this is the job for me. You want to be in a position where you regurgitate what you've understood about the role, you give an overview of your background and how it relates, and say, you know, is there anything about my background that you feel I would need to work on, or a point of clarity that I didn't cover with you? And it gives you a chance to clarify it right at that particular juncture. So there isn't you walking away and saying, oh, I wish I would have said this, or, you know, he seemed a little funny when I left and I wonder what that was. You know, it provides you an opportunity to really get all of those things taken care of at the time, all right? So we have the introduction, we have the meat and potatoes, which is the different levels that we spoke with you about, that you should be prepared in all those different areas, and hopefully you have an understanding of how important it is to get strategic, how important it is to get more confident in the business of you, and it is in a completely different time. If you said to me, Joan, what was it like 30 years ago? Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, literally a parrot could go to an interview. Can you do this? Yes, I could. How about that? Yeah, I got that covered. It is not that world anymore. And I'm sure we have many people on this call today. The people that are listening are shaking their heads in acknowledgement because you're feeling it. And hopefully during our time together, you can now kind of relate back to a past interview and see exactly you know, what is going on. So I want to just kind of close out with some questions that we have in the chat box. You mentioned aligning my experience with the company's mission, vision, culture, and values. I'm currently employed and want to leave for a better fit, but the job description of potential employers don't outline what these values. Very good. How much am I allowed to interview them about this? I want to make sure it's a good fit. Okay, excellent question. The fact of the matter is that it is out there. From a candidate standpoint, what we do is we see the job description, all right? We go to their website, but we're not looking at their website in the right way. We're not looking at the company in the right way. if anybody shops at Wegmans, they have their mission, their vision. It's all over the store. You have a very, very good sense of what their culture looks like. You absolutely should be a self-empowered person, whether you're employed or unemployed. But when you're employed, absolutely you want to make sure it's a good fit. Have to be improving your business model. If you're not improving your business model, you should not be looking at this position. If there is not some value that comes from this experience, you should not be taking it. It's an absolute waste of time, and you're not going to be able to explain it away in a few years when you're looking at another position. A job has to fit within your future narrative. It has to flow. It has to make sense. What I can share with you is if you go to somebody's website, you go to their Facebook page, you see what they're tweeting about, you look at their LinkedIn, you can absolutely get a sense of what their vision and mission is. Excuse me. We're not looking in the right places. So be thinking about that, and very frankly, for the business of you, you should be thinking about you, because at the end of the day, there is no one who is going to take care of you. Even in a family business, even if it's a son to daughter, you know, nepotism, this, that, and the other thing, eventually those things all come to roost if it's not the right person in the right job at the right time. All right. So I love your approach to that. It's excellent. All right. When asked about weaknesses, what about giving a weakness that would not work against you? Again, that's what you were taught, and I'm asking you to think different. And I get it. It's just so contrived. It's so yesterday. It's so disco. I mean, there's no other way for me to say it. I would much rather have you give a strategic answer, because it's going to be a lot more powerful. You know, Mark, I heard from you that you were looking for somebody who had Fortune 50 experience, and frankly, I haven't sold into Fortune 50 accounts. But within the confines of my companies, as I compare them, this is what I have done. So again, when you're taking a weakness and you're turning it into a strategic response, it's not about them asking you what your weakness is. It's about asking them what you perceive your weakness to be, whether it's strategic and whether you've learned something from it. See, that again, you got to get to the why. Why do they want to know what your weakness is? Why is that one of the oldest questions known to man? You know, we could take it back to Roman times, all right? Now it's about, you know, what is your perceived weakness? You know, I have my associate's degree, and I understand that you would have preferred a 4-year degreed person for this role. What I can share with you is that I've been to many auxiliary classes. I am very, very open-minded to continuation of my education. I would love to learn. So I'd be happy to continue my schooling in a way to impact both you and myself. You know, again, that's what they're looking for. So if you just say, you know, well, my weakness is this, and, you know, but it's working too hard, and geez, I always stay after 5, and my wife says, no, don't. It just seems so unnatural to them. So I just question whether it's natural or whether it's not. And I can only tell you from my interviewing experience, most people just make crap up because they think it impresses the employers, and it doesn't impress them at all. So food for thought. So I was one of 400 made redundant in one day in my previous job. What's the best way to address this if I am asked in the interview? It was due to the economic crisis, so I don't want to bring up painful memories for the business. Yes, disco. I did say disco. Yes, you heard me right. The truth of the matter is, you are speaking to an employer who has undergone fiscal hardships. They get it. What most candidates do is, when they've been downsized, it's kind of like being kicked out of a family, because they haven't looked at this business as their partner. They've looked at it more like they're part of my family. And in doing so, when you're kicked out of the family, it's a pretty traumatic event, which is why I don't like you to look at it like family. It's not like my old partners I don't absolutely love, and I just had dinner with one of my old partners, But the fact of the matter is, I was moving APA and career reform in a different direction, and we parted company. You need not to make work personal. You need to keep personal personal, and you need to run work like it's a business. And when you do that, when you are downsized, you will recognize that it is a business decision. So the more that you can connect with the realities of fiscal hardships, an employer will see that you're connecting more with them. So you say, with my organization for the past 10 years, they had gone through a realignment of resources. I was affected by that restructuring. It was a great opportunity, and I love my tenure there. But I understand the reality of redundancies, and in doing so, I'm really considering this an opportunity for me to look at my future in a different way. And I really do consider it an opportunity. I need to find that next partner. It's probably the impetus that I needed to continue to grow, and I am very, very committed to moving in an enhanced direction. So again, just turn it around in a way that really honestly is true. I mean, I downsized 2 people from my firm last year. Great people, love them to death. Texted with the one person I downsized yesterday, helping her secure a new position. But I was moving my company in a direction that these people did not have skills for. And that was just the reality of it. One person had been with me for 8 years, the other person for 3. So, it's just the reality of business. Where I'm taking this company is different than where they were going. But when I hired them, it was true. So I just think we need to come to terms with how quickly the world is turning, and we just really need to be more realistic about it. So we're running over, you guys. I'm going to answer one more question, and then feel more than free to, email or whatever, and Kim will give you she'll give you instructions at the end. When going for an interview and have had a few bad experience with previous managers and are asked about that, what do you say? What I say is, number one, you need to understand why you're having problems with previous managers. Like, I'm not going to let you off scot-free. I do a lot of executive coaching. And in doing so, I work with a lot of people that don't really understand their natural behaviors and motivators, so they don't know how well to play in a sandbox. I would like you to spend some time in looking at those managers, seeing are there commonalities, and if there are commonalities, and hopefully there are, that you don't respond well to somebody who's very dominant or a screamer or whatever the case may be, so you don't thrive in that environment. So don't work for another person like the managers you worked for in the past. So what you could say is, and again, I'm going out on a limb here to say, my leadership style is one of collaboration. I love being in a culture where everybody's working together, all towards the same vision and mission. My managers in the past had been more under that autocratic mindset where it was very much, do what I say, not as I do, everybody moving forward. Where I thrive is that there's a clear-cut mission, there's a clear-cut vision, and everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction. As I research companies, that seems to be a theme of growth-oriented companies. And I loved when I went to your website and I saw how collaboratively you represented your internal customers or workforce and the type of not-for-profit work you've done on your Facebook. And that's why I was so interested to get together with you and chat, because it seems like this is the type of environment that I can really thrive and grow in. So I hope that helps you. All right. So Kim, I know we're running a little bit over, but we had a bunch of great questions. So you want to follow up with our final housekeeping here?
Yes. First of all, I want to say we had a great turnout, and thank you so much to everybody who took their lunch hour to be with us today. A few things. Make sure that you are liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and connecting with us on LinkedIn, because we are sharing some great content. We write at least 3 blogs a week on career-related topics. So please make sure that you are checking in with us. And we will be also offering a more advanced interview webinar shortly. So please keep an eye on incoming events. Also, If you didn't have your question answered, post it on our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you. If you're not a social media guru, that's fine. Just email me directly at Kim, Kim, at apasolutions.com, and I will be sure to answer it for you. Again, thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
And just a parting comment, Kim, if I may, just when you talk about Facebook, I love the story and I repeat it. And if you listen to my webinars, I apologize because you're going to have to keep hearing it. But we had a person who really poured their heart out on our Facebook page, and it was just very natural and organic. And one of our employers actually read it and called us about her and asked about her circumstances. Make a long story short, he was just so impressed with the way she approached it. And he interviewed her. We didn't even have the position, but he ended up hiring her for a job that he was contemplating filling. And it just worked out awesome. So the point about it is, you guys, is we're interviewing every day. And that's really the way that we should be approaching our future. It shouldn't be relegated to an uncomfortable position for an hour, all right? That's not what it's about. I'm interviewing for you right now as the president and owner of an organization that you elicited more information from. So hopefully, this information has been valuable to you. Engage with us, as Kim suggests, and we'll look forward to consistent communication. Have a great day.